Welcome to Capitol Catch-Up, the podcast that breaks down what's happening on Capitol Hill. I'm Victor.
And I'm Leanie. Today we're diving into a slate of Senate bills, a handful of key nominations, recent committee hearings, and a look at the latest congressional record. Let's start with the legislation.
First on the docket is Senate Bill 470, the Respect State Housing Laws Act. It would amend the CARES Act to strip away a federal requirement that landlords give a notice to vacate. In plain terms, that requirement would disappear, letting each state set its own rules on tenant notices.
That could be a big shift for renters and landlords alike. Historically, the CARES Act included a temporary eviction protection during the pandemic. Removing the notice requirement could give states more flexibility, but also raises concerns about tenant protections in places with weak housing laws.
The bill has been referred to the Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, but it hasn't moved beyond that referral yet. We'll have to watch for a committee hearing before it can advance to the floor.
Next up is Senate Bill 823, the Intergovernmental Critical Minerals Task Force Act. This one creates a task force made up of federal agencies, state and local officials, and tribal representatives to tackle our reliance on China and other countries for critical minerals and rare earths.
Critical minerals are the backbone of everything from electric vehicles to defense systems. By establishing a coordinated task force, the bill aims to map out supply chain vulnerabilities, recommend domestic mining projects, and improve data sharing. It also mandates a study by the Comptroller General on the regulatory landscape, which could lead to streamlined permitting for new mines.
That's a direct response to the strategic competition with China that's been a theme of U.S. policy for years. If passed, it could accelerate domestic production and reduce supply shocks.
Senate Bill 825, the Fighting Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Act of 2025, targets mental health support for public safety officers, police, firefighters, EMTs. It requires the Attorney General to propose a comprehensive program that includes evidence-based trauma-informed care, peer support, and family services.
The bill also calls for stakeholder consultations, meaning agencies, unions, and NGOs would have a seat at the table. It's a bipartisan effort recognizing that first responders face higher rates of PTSD and acute stress disorder.
Moving to corrections, Senate Bill 736, the Lieutenant Osvaldo Albarrate Stopping Prison Contraband Act, would raise the maximum imprisonment term for anyone who smuggles prohibited items, like phones, into prisons. It also directs the Bureau of Prisons to review its contraband policies within a year.
Contraband, especially smartphones, poses security risks inside facilities. By increasing penalties, the bill hopes to deter smuggling networks and protect both staff and inmates.
Senate Bill 734 honors Edward J. Dwight, Jr. with a Congressional Gold Medal. Dwight was the first African-American astronaut candidate in the United States, a trailblazer who later became a noted artist and honorary Space Force member.
The Gold Medal is the nation's highest civilian honor, and this bill not only recognizes his contributions to space exploration, but also highlights the broader struggle for racial equality in the aerospace field.
Senate Bill 630, the Quapaw Tribal Settlement Act of 2025, authorizes the Treasury to disperse $137.5 million to the Quapaw Nation and certain members, following a court-ordered recommendation. The funds will be managed by the Department of the Interior and distributed according to a plan the Secretary can mediate if the parties can't agree.
This settlement resolves a long-standing dispute and provides a substantial infusion of resources to the Quapaw community, supporting economic development and cultural preservation.
Wildfire preparedness gets a boost with Senate Bill 902, the Wildfire Response and Preparedness Act of 2025. It sets a 30-minute target for the initial response to wildland fires on federal lands and requires fire suppression assets to be on scene within 3 hours.
The bill also calls for a comprehensive report to Congress within a year, covering performance metrics, a unified budget request, and changes to the federal dispatch system. With climate change intensifying fire seasons, faster response times could save lives and property.
On agriculture, Senate Bill 912, the Securing American Agriculture Act, requires the Secretary of Agriculture to publish an annual assessment of U.S. dependence on critical agricultural inputs from the People's Republic of China, things like equipment, fertilizers, and veterinary drugs.
The assessment will include recommendations to diversify supply chains and protect trade secrets. It's a bipartisan effort to shore up food security amid geopolitical tensions.
To strengthen the mining workforce, Senate Bill 1130, the Technology Grants to Strengthen Domestic Mining Education Act of 2025, creates a grant program $10 million a year from 2026 through 2033 for mining schools. It also establishes a Mining Professional Development Advisory Board to oversee the grants.
By investing in education, the bill aims to produce the next generation of mining engineers, reducing reliance on foreign mineral sources and boosting U.S. competitiveness in the global energy market.
Healthcare coverage for congenital anomalies is addressed by Senate Bill 1677, the Ensuring Lasting Smiles Act. It would require group health plans and insurers to cover outpatient and inpatient services for diagnosing and treating birth defects, including dental and orthodontic care.
The legislation also mandates notice to plan participants and a study on network adequacy, ensuring that beneficiaries have access to qualified providers.
Breast cancer screening costs are tackled in Senate Bill 1500, the Access to Breast Cancer Diagnosis Act of 2025. It prohibits cost sharing, deductibles, co-pays, or coinsurance for diagnostic and supplemental breast exams under both group and individual health plans.
That means women won't face out-of-pocket expenses for essential screenings, potentially catching cancers earlier and improving outcomes.
Conservation funding is renewed with Senate Bill 1547, the America the Beautiful Act. It reauthorizes the National Parks and Public Land Legacy Restoration Fund through 2033, bumping funding from $1.9 billion to $2 billion, and adds reporting requirements on deferred maintenance and asset disposal.
The Act also encourages public donations and alternative allocations if appropriations are delayed, ensuring that parks and public lands receive steady support.
Dental coverage gets a boost through Senate Bill 1164, the Increasing Access to Dental Insurance Act. It gives the Secretary of Health and Human Services authority to let individuals enroll in standalone dental plans on the federal exchanges without having to purchase a health plan.
That could expand dental coverage for millions who currently can't afford a combined health-dental product, improving oral health outcomes.
Accessibility for the blind is addressed by Senate Bill 1918, the Access Technology Affordability Act of 2025. It provides a refundable tax credit of up to $2,000 adjusted for inflation over any 3-year period for qualified assistive technology like screen readers or braille displays.
The credit expires at the end of 2030, giving a limited window for beneficiaries to offset the high cost of these essential tools.
Finally, Senate Bill 2096, the Daniel J. Harvey Jr. and Adam Lambert Improving Service Member Transition to Reduce Veteran Suicide Act, amends Titles 10 and 38 to improve the Transition Assistance Program and the Solid Start Program. It requires the Departments of Defense and Veterans Affairs to provide comprehensive mental health information to service members leaving the military, and to submit a joint report to Congress within a year.
By strengthening the transition process, the bill aims to reduce veteran suicide rates, a persistent challenge for our armed forces.
That covers the legislation. Let's shift to the recent nominations. The Senate has confirmed, or is considering, several key appointments.
Zachary Keller of Louisiana has been nominated to serve as United States Attorney for the Western District of Louisiana, succeeding Brandon B. Brown.
William Boyle of North Carolina is the nominee for United States Attorney for the Eastern District of North Carolina, filling the seat vacated by Michael F. Easley, Jr.
Kevin Holmes of Arkansas is slated to become United States Attorney for the Western District of Arkansas, taking over from Dwayne A. Keyes, whose term has expired.
Andrew Benson of Maine is nominated for United States Attorney for the District of Maine, succeeding Darcy N. McElwee.
Ademola Adewale Sadiq of New York has been put forward as United States Director of the African Development Bank, a 5-year term succeeding Orrin E. Whitshaw.
Matthew Anderson of Colorado is nominated as Deputy Administrator of NASA, following the resignation of Pamela A. Melroy.
Darren Smith of Wyoming is the nominee for United States Attorney for the District of Wyoming, replacing Mark A. Clausen.
Richard Price of Missouri is nominated for United States Attorney for the Western District of Missouri, succeeding Timothy A. Garrison.
Brian David Miller of Pennsylvania is the nominee for United States Attorney for the Middle District of Pennsylvania, taking over from Gerard M. Karam.
Brian Barber of Louisiana has been nominated as United States Marshal for the Western District of Louisiana, filling the seat of Henry Lee Whitehorn, Sr.
And Gregory Gilmore of Illinois is the nominee for United States Attorney for the Central District of Illinois, succeeding Gregory K. Harris.
All of these nominations will go through the Senate Judiciary Committee before a full Senate vote. Confirmation can be swift for uncontroversial candidates, but any political friction could delay the process.
Turning to committee activity. Today, the House Foreign Affairs Committee is holding a hearing on the FY 2027 budget request for State Department adjacent entities. That will shape funding for diplomatic missions, foreign aid, and related programs.
Meanwhile, an oversight hearing titled "The Federal Reclamation Program's Next Century" is scheduled, though the specific committee isn't listed. The Reclamation Program oversees water projects in the West, so the hearing will likely address infrastructure, water rights, and climate resilience.
The House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence is holding an open hearing called 25 Years After 9/11, reviewing the 9/11 Commission and Intelligence Reform Impacts. It will assess how the reforms enacted after the 2001 attacks have held up and what adjustments might be needed.
Finally, the congressional record for May 18, 2026, shows a heated Senate session. Senator Grassley warned about Iran's aggressive posture and supported former President Trump's actions. Senator Schumer, on the other hand, attacked the Trump administration's Department of Justice practices, called out a proposed golden ballroom and secret police as vanity projects, and urged a war powers resolution to end U.S. involvement in Iran. He also criticized Trump's trip to China for failing to curb fentanyl flows.
That snapshot underscores the deep partisan divide on foreign policy and domestic governance, which will inevitably influence the legislative agenda we've just discussed.
To sum up, listeners should keep an eye on a few key pieces of legislation: the Respect State Housing Laws Act for tenant-landlord dynamics, the Intergovernmental Critical Minerals Task Force Act for national security supply chains, and the Access to Breast Cancer Diagnosis Act for out-of-pocket health costs. Also watch the progress of the nominations for U.S. attorneys and the NASA Deputy Administrator as they affect law enforcement and space policy.
And don't miss the upcoming committee hearings on the State Department budget, the Reclamation Program, and the 25-year review of 9/11 reforms. They'll shape funding and oversight priorities for the coming year.
That's all for today's Capitol Catch-Up. Thanks for listening.
Be sure to subscribe for more in-depth analysis of what's happening on Capitol Hill.